Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to One Awesome Autistic. I obviously talk about stuff to do with being autistic and issues surrounding autism. Today I wanted to talk about something that I wouldn't say it's close to my heart, it's something I'm a little bit passionate about, and that is the AQ50. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a breakdown of the questions as well. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through all 50 questions because that would take up way too much time and be way too boring to listen to me drone on about them all. The AQ50 is just a shortened term which stands for Autism Quotient 50, which means it has 50 questions. There is an AQ10 as well that sometimes is used instead of the AQ50, and it's just a questionnaire that can be part of the process to autism diagnosis. Not everybody around the world or even in different areas of the UK will use the AQ50, but it is something that was used when I was diagnosed. I'll post links in the description below, particularly of the AQ50, so that if anybody wants to click that link and see the questions as I'm in the breaking down questions section, just so it gives you a bit of a visual to go along with it. Or if anybody wants to actually fill it in and see what they would actually score, whether you're diagnosed autistic or not, or whether you're thinking of seeking diagnosis. The AQ50 was developed by Simon Baron-Cohen. I know we're not going to go into him, we've talked about him before, and we know the opinions. There are lots of opinions about Mr. Baron-Cohen and autism out there. We're not talking about him today though, we're just talking about this AQ50. So it was his team at Cambridge that developed it. And like I say, it's an aid in diagnosing autism. It's not the one thing that will be used to diagnose autism. You have to have like a full assessment for that, which is a longer process, but it is just one indicator. And some people do these for self-diagnosis as well online. It's just something that will give an indication. Now the thing is that the study that created this was meant to actually show Asperger's syndrome and high functioning autism, and we all know that those terms are being phased out. In some parts of the world it is still used, but in a lot of parts it isn't used anymore, and you are just diagnosed as having an autism spectrum disorder or an autism spectrum condition. Now if these terms are being phased out and this questionnaire is looking for those particular types of autism, then show me this questionnaire is going to end up getting phased out or replaced with something else. If you have an opinion on anything I'm talking about in this video, feel free to comment below and talk about it. Me personally, I think this questionnaire needs to go and it needs to be replaced with something else, but I'll kind of point out why when I break down the questions, and that might make it seem a little bit more obvious why I want it scrapped. Now each question gives you kind of like a score of either 0 or 1, and if you score within the 33 to 50 range, then that is the indication that you are autistic. And I know what you're all yelling at me right now. What if I score like 30 or 31 or 32? Well, you can still argue your case if you score just under, because that still gives an indication that you might possibly be autistic. It is a very rigid format because you've got 4 answers to choose from. It's not like a filling in answers and somebody's going to read it. You have 4 boxes to tick, and that is strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, and that is what you have to answer on every question. And obviously I found some of the questions to be very ambiguous. I found them very, very hard to answer, and when I originally filled it out, it's been like 2 years now, it took me ages because I had to sit and think about every single question. When it comes to things like this, I'm not very literal, and that's what made it a little bit difficult for me. If you are very literal, then there are also some questions that are going to be quite difficult because it's like a this or this question. Like, do you like this or this? What if you don't like either? You're going to find that very hard to kind of get past, but I'll talk about that a little bit more when I break down the questions. And a problem with the questions as well is that some of them are very like stereotypical autistic person type of questions, and as we all know, autistic people are all very, very different, and there are actually quite a lot of us that don't fit into the stereotype. I don't. That's why I was late diagnosed. That's why it wasn't picked up when I was a child, because I don't fit the stereotype. But a lot of these questions are very, very stereotyping. So I've grouped some of these questions together, and I'm going to talk about my interpretation of them. I don't know if that's correct, but it's just what I read into them. But other people may obviously see something different about these questions. Not all of them are ambiguous. Some of them are straight to the point, and some of them are very self-explanatory, and some are standalone questions, whereas others obviously I've grouped together because I've found that those can be grouped together. So like I was talking about with questions of liking one thing or another, questions 13 and 24 are like that. Question 13 in particular was hard for me because it's asking whether you prefer going to the theatre or going to the museum. Now what these questions are actually asking, I thought, is that do you prefer a quieter place where maybe you could go on your own, or do you prefer to go somewhere loud that maybe you would go with more than one or more people? Because question 13 is asking whether you prefer the theatre or museums, I like both. I love the theatre, I love musicals, I would pick that, but I also love the museum. I am a bit of a history buff, I love my history, I love museums. I actually spent one of my birthdays on my own in London at the British Museum. So I love them both. So what am I meant to answer there? Now, because I know that I prefer the quiet over loud places typically, I kind of picked that I'd prefer museums, but only because that's how I interpreted the question. But like I say, if you're very literal and you like the theatre and you like museums, that's just going to be incredibly frustrating to try and answer. There's a few questions here. So questions 3, question 8, 14, 40 and 50, they all seem to orientate around imagination, which again, it's stereotyping. Autistics don't have imagination, whereas actually quite a few of us do. Personally, I like to write and I love to read. Writing, you need to have some kind of imagination to write. I love making up stories, I love writing them down, so I need a bit of imagination for that. So these are questions that I'm going to probably do bad on. But question 3 in particular I found a little bit ambiguous because it's asking about if you can imagine something like in your mind. Well, if it's something that I've seen, particularly if I've seen it a lot, then yes, because it's not imagination, it's memory recall. So that's a little bit too ambiguous for me. So how would I answer that? You know, that's where I struggled with questions like those ones. Question 1 is a bit of a standalone question, but I also found this actually probably the most ambiguous question out of every one of them. Because it's asking if you like to do things on your own or with other people. Things. What are things? Things could be anything. I don't like to go out of the house alone, so if we're talking about going to the shops or going for a walk, going to a zoo or anything like that, then no, I don't want to do that on my own, and I will not do it on my own. I will go with somebody else. But if it's asking for things being stuff to do in the house, like I don't like to play computer games with other people, I like to play solo computer games. So in that sense, I would answer completely differently in that, no, I don't like to do things with other people because those things I like to do alone. So again, how am I meant to answer this question? I'm even getting frustrated just thinking about it now. 4 questions that I have a big problem with. Questions 10, 19, 29 and 49. To me, these come across as male brain orientated questions. Doesn't mean male orientated, it means how your brain thinks. Male brain orientated is to do with numbers and statistics and things like that. I also have a really, really rubbish memory, like really terrible memory, and the older I get, the worse it gets. So no, I don't remember people's birthdays. Not because it's on purpose or I don't have a talent for numbers and things, it's just because I have a rubbish memory. 42 and 45, again very stereotypical because they appear to be about theory of mind, but as we know, a lot of autistic people do have theory of mind. So you're going to struggle with those questions and probably score 0 rather than 1 on them. The last 5 questions I'm going to talk about is questions 2, 25, 35, 37 and 43, because they are about planning and routine. This is where I'm going to trip up a little bit because I also have ADHD. I actually don't like sticking to plans and routines too often, or I do, but temporarily. Like, they change all the time, my plans and my routine, and yes, I don't like things to change at last minute. I don't deal with it very well, but if I'm given a little bit of notice, then I can deal with it and I'm fine, and I can change my routine around it if I have one for that day. But quite often I don't have a routine. I don't get up in the morning and do this and this. Yes, I have alarms set for the same time every morning. That's about it. That's about as far as an actual routine I go. But that's nothing to do with my autism, that's to do with my ADHD. And statistically, 35% of autistic people in the UK also have ADHD. So 35% of people are going to trip up here. Anyway, they're the last ones I wanted to talk about, because if I go through any more, I'm just going to get more frustrated and annoyed, because as you can probably tell, I do not like the AQ50. While I was kind of like writing a script for this about what I wanted to talk about, so I didn't forget because, you know, bad memory, I decided to actually answer the questions again, because obviously I did it 2 years ago when I was first going for my diagnosis, and I haven't really looked at it that much since. So I decided to fill it in again. 2 years ago when I did it and I sat and thought about every question, I scored 42 out of 50. So I was like, that made me feel relieved, because I was like, okay, I've kind of got something on my side here. Now when I did it today, I didn't really sit and think about the questions too much. I kind of just answered them. And today I scored 33. So does that mean my autism has got better in the last 2 years, or I'm dealing with things a lot easier? Am I now less autistic? Or did I overthink the questions last time? Did I underthink them this time? And to all of that, I would say no. The difference with me personally is that I feel different every day. But that's because I'm not only autistic, I have ADHD, I've got depression, I've got anxiety. The weather changes how I feel in a day, how much sleep I get, if I'm ill or not. All of these will change how I answer questions like this. So if I did it tomorrow, I probably would score something different, because I'm probably going to feel different tomorrow. But I do think that does go to show how easily the AQ50 can be harmful to autistic people trying to seek an official diagnosis, particularly if that official diagnosis is really, really needed for support, to be taken seriously about how you feel, and also as something to be able to fight for your own right. So I can see how people can fail this questionnaire, particularly if you are somebody who is quite literal. You could possibly score lower on this. If you're not male brain orientated, that's going to affect your score on this. And also, if your special interest has anything to do with people, then the kind of social cues and any of the other social questions you're probably not going to score on, but that doesn't make you any less autistic. If you do score less on this, but you really strongly feel that you're autistic, and if you feel a little bit invalidated, talk to other autistic people about how you feel, why you think you're autistic, what are like the signs and symptoms of you being autistic, because quite a lot of the time you get better validation from other autistic people than you do from questionnaires like this. And it's not the only kind of like questionnaire out there that you can fill out to get results that you can show to a doctor as well. So if you feel like this isn't for you and it's not really worked out in your favour, there are other questionnaires to do. And again, ask on Facebook, ask on Twitter. There is a whole big autistic community out there that is more than willing to help. And it's also a really good point for support as well. That's a bit about the AQ50. That is it from me today, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Bye for now. Oh, before I do go, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have started putting things on the ends of videos down below, just in case you want to click on one of these, because one is a link to another video of mine that you may be interested in watching, and another one is a subscribe button. So if you enjoy this video, please feel free to click subscribe. That's it from me. Bye for now, guys.